Hello, and welcome to another episode of Casual Learning. I'm your host, John Bannan. Let's deal with contingency planning. Now, I'm referring to contingency planning in a very general sense. I'm not specifically referring to any sort of contingency planning, such as disaster recovery planning for computer systems, for instance, or businesses suffer interruptions, how they get back into business as quickly as possible. In fact, my father, Jack Bannan, was a pioneer in that industry of disaster recovery planning. But that's not what I'm going to be talking about. I'm talking about just general contingency planning. Um, so uh, life can be very unpredictable. Newsflash, and you often do not get what you want, or your plans don't work out the way you thought they were. This is very common. This happens to everybody, and it happens, unfortunately, an awful lot. But you shouldn't give up, and you should plan anyway. Uh, and you should have goals and things you want. And this contingency planning is how do you deal with the situation where your plan doesn't work out the way you wanted it to work out? There's an old saying in a Robert Burns poem from 1786 called To a Mouse. And the phrase is, the best laid plans of mice and men. And what that means is that even the most careful planning doesn't necessarily ensure success. So contingency planning is a very important life skill to have, and you should take it seriously. And yeah, it does involve a lot of extra effort and a lot of thinking. And I do know a lot of people don't like to think that much, but the more successful people do. They do think a lot, and they certainly engage in contingency planning. Because the disruptions in life will occur, and those with a backup plan are the ones most likely to get what they want. So it's wise to plan for contingencies, not just have a single plan of action. Um, so, what are the steps? So, the first thing is you think about how to get what you want. Now, this is different than thinking of what you want. That's pretty easy. This is thinking about how to get what you want. There's a big difference between knowing what you want and knowing how to get what you want. The steps that you need to take in order to accomplish what it is that you want. And that's absolutely critical. Just to want something in general isn't going to land it on your lap unless you know how to go about getting it. Very important thing to understand the difference between wanting something and knowing how the steps to take in order to get it. If you don't know the how, chances are you're never going to get what you want. So, number one, think about how to get what you want, and you need a plan, steps, particular steps that you can take that will likely lead to what you want. Um, and this often involves educating yourself about what those steps need to be, um, learning from others, or learning from resources or books or whatever. Uh, Learning from people who already have what it is that you want. They're a great resource in terms of telling you what steps are necessary to get where they are, because chances are they had to know what those steps were to get where they were, and they can tell you what those steps are. And We're not born with an understanding of all the steps necessary to get whatever it is you want. You will have a desire for something, but that doesn't mean you have the steps. So you have to educate yourself in terms of finding out what those steps are, and in your particular circumstances for you. So then the next step is uh, assess the best plan in terms of likelihood for achieving the results you want. So you think of all the steps that are necessary to reach the goal you want, and you assess, well, which plan has the greatest likelihood of succeeding. And you could think in terms of percentages of likelihood, but what's your the plan that's most likely to succeed among the other plans that you have, and that's your plan A. Contingency sets in after plan A. So your plan A may not work. In fact, there's a good chance it won't. But it might, but then again, it may not. And as things change, you may have to change your plan A and adapt it to changing circumstances. Or if you learn new things and maybe your plan A wasn't as good a plan as you thought it was, and there's steps that you missed, or maybe steps you got to throw out that just aren't effective, and you're constantly revising plan A. Uh, as you learn new things, you should revise your plan A. Very few plan A's never undergo any revision. They usually get revised as you learn and experience. But contingency planning is about plan B, C, D, and E. What if plan A doesn't work? And it's not going to work. And you've changed it and it's still not working and it isn't going to work. And plan A is not as likely to work as you thought it was. Uh, that's contingency planning. So plan for disruptions that will prevent plan A from working. These are contingencies. Um, so the next step is think of other reasonable influences that might disrupt your plan. So contingency planning isn't about thinking of absolutely everything that could possibly go wrong. You're trying to think of the things that could definitely go wrong, but are more likely to go wrong than less likely things that could go wrong. I mean, in terms of possibility, all plans are contingent on an asteroid not flying out of the sky and blowing the Earth up, right? But that is so unlikely to happen. That's not part of your contingency planning, and it shouldn't be. It's a waste of time thinking about that. So your contingent plans, plan B, C, D, and E, they should be based on things that could go wrong that are more likely to go wrong than like an asteroid coming out of the sky. So these are things that there's a chance this is going to happen, a realistic chance. So you think about those different scenarios where there's realistic chances that something isn't going to work out the way you want it to work out, and you think of those factors, and then you develop contingency plans. What do you do if those things occur? Um, Now, a lot of us don't like to think about our plan not working out, but most plans don't work out. So you're going to be more successful if you think about contingency planning, because there's a good chance your plan's not going to work. It's your best plan. It may work, but then again, it may not. There's a lot of things that can disrupt plans. Um, so uh, a lot of people just don't want to think about their plan not working out, and that's a mistake. That's a mistake because plans don't work out a lot. So you should think about contingencies. Uh, lose that gut feeling that you're just going after one plan and that's it. You're rolling the dice. Everything is going. This plan either works or you don't care. You're gonna. You just can't believe that that's not going to happen. No, you should think about contingencies. So be more mature about it and think. Other things can happen that disrupt your plan, and what are you going to do if those things happen? That's being smart. Um, so there's an old saying: learn to make lemonade out of the lemons that life hands you. And that's a very good philosophy to keep in mind. That's essentially contingency planning. It's essentially understanding that things are not necessarily going to go your way. And how can you take what has happened and work it to your advantage so that it ends up helping you? Successful people make lemonade out of the lemons that are handed to them because you will be handed lemons. There's no doubt about it. Uh, uh, you should think about how you will react if your plan gets disrupted. That's what contingency planning is. Think in advance that if this unfortunate disruption occurs, what actions am I going to take? And they should be your plan B actions. Um, you have these thought out in advance, well in advance, so that when these things occur, you know what steps to take, and you can do it in a level-headed manner because you've already thought all these things out. You avoid emotional reactions to your plan not working, and emotional reactions are usually very dumb, uh, not thought out at all, and usually result in costly mistakes. So you've thought well in advance of what you're going to do if something disrupts your plan. You avoid those emotional reactions, which can be disastrous for you because they're just so dumb, and you do dumb things. If you got it planned out in advance, you can avoid a lot of that stupidity that results from emotional reactions to things. Now, that's not to say you can eliminate your emotions if your plan doesn't work out, but at least you'll have a backup plan in mind that you can follow, and that you can suppress your emotional reaction and just follow that plan instead. And it will help a lot in terms of you being successful and avoiding um, rash emotional responses that could be very costly. Um, so when you're thinking about contingency planning, you got to keep your eye on the prize. So plan A is to get you that prize. Plan B, is also to get you that prize, and so is Plan C. But it's a different way, different steps in terms of getting it. So you got to think about what's most important. What's your most important goal? you know, we all have goals, or at least you should have goals, because people who don't have goals rarely get what they want. So think about your goals, and we all have goals that are there's broader goals, more important goals, higher priority goals, more specific goals, and if plan A is after a specific goal and you're not getting that specific goal, it's good to remember that you have a broader, uh, more important, overreaching goal that can still succeed, uh, but on a backup plan B, C, D, and E. So think of what's most important. What are your most important goals? And your contingencies can be focused on those more important, broader goals than a more specific goal, because it's easier to plan for a much broader goal than a more specific goal that maybe you can't do anything about. So remember the broader picture of things, and your broader goals and your contingencies will still work if they end up getting you those broader goals. Uh, so what are the what are the things that can disrupt your plans, your plan A? Well, the biggest thing is probably yourself. We are probably the biggest obstacles to our own success or our own planning, uh, and it's for various reasons. And it can be a lack of knowledge, of education, lack of skill, a lack of planning skill, a lack of knowing what you want. It could be a lack of intelligence or a lack of maturity. Um, but generally, we are our own worst enemies. And general lack of emotional intelligence. We often ruin our own plans. So, uh, the number one disruption is usually yourself. And you can limit that sort of disruption by doing lots of things that will prevent you from disrupting your own plans, like being in control or knowing, educating yourself, um, being more proactive instead of reactive. Um, just furthering or bettering your own person and your own intelligence and understanding. So that's the number one disruptor of plans. Number two is people, other people besides yourself. Other people are usually the cause of a disruption in your plan A. People can be fickle, indecisive, they can change their minds, some people are unreliable, they can be deceptive, um, they can be moody, or just downright nasty people. And you know this, and usually plans are disrupted because of this people. So, contingency planning, some person comes along and ruins your plan. That's a very typical story for why a plan got ruined. And, how do you deal with that? Well, if you know the person well enough, you might be able to work around them, have a workaround, plan B, or you get them the heck out of your life. Just get rid of them. Get them out of your life as soon as you can, and then you don't have to deal with that person anymore. But major source of disruptions right there, people. Other things that can disrupt are number three, the economy. You know, supply and demand. uh, money, um, prices, and returns on investment, and financial conditions and circumstances, uh, that can really disrupt plans. No doubt about it. And that, to an extent, predicting the economy is pretty hard. I mean, that's why we have economists uh, and financial advisors. But they're never always right anyway. So when this happens, this might be something that's out of your control completely. But you can still plan for certain disruptions in the economy or in your own personal finances. A good goal, I think, is to want to be financially independent. Whether you can do that or not, study it. See if you can work towards it. It takes a while, but it's a great place to be in financial independence, where you don't have to rely on employers, for instance. 'Cause employers, they're big problems. There are people problems and there are economy problems. Your own personal income. Uh, a great resource for understanding how to become financially independent is Robert Kiyosaki's books. He wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad, which was the number one bestseller in the New York Times, I think around 1998. He has a whole series of books. He's a great guy to listen to in terms of understanding financial independence and how to go about trying to obtain it. Um, what other influences will disrupt plans? Health. Your health can disrupt plans, or the health of other people can disrupt plans. And health's a tough one. Fixing health problems, if they're fixable, can take time and can be expensive. And this can be a major disruption, a very difficult thing to deal with. But some health issues you can see coming, and you can plan for them, and you should take that into account, and think about the health of the people involved in your plan and the possibility that that could be a disruption. And then there's just other circumstances that can disrupt plans. There's a million other different things that could go wrong that could disrupt the plan. Um, some of them are simply not foreseeable. And if you can't foresee it, there's nothing you can do in terms of planning for it. Insurance helps. You have some sort of insurance against liability, or health insurance or life insurance. That often can protect you against many, many contingencies that are not even foreseeable to you, but the insurance companies foresee a lot of this stuff because they deal with it all the time. Um, but other circumstances clearly can disrupt. So, you have your idea of what can disrupt your plan, and how would you react, and what steps would you take if one of these disruptions occurred, or multiple disruptions occurred? Plan B or Plan C or Plan D could involve multiple disruptions, different factors or circumstances combining to disrupt your plan. Uh, that could occur, less likely to occur that multiple things may disrupt your plan at once. But it's not impossible. That does happen. Coincidences occur where just multiple disruptions occur at the same time. And what are you going to do in those circumstances? That might be your plan D or plan E, but it can happen. Of course, you don't want to, you want to focus on the most reasonably likely disruptions to occur. You don't have to go crazy, but because these contingency plans aren't written out. I mean, they're in your head generally. You've thought about them and understood how you're going to react. I mean, for businesses, contingency plans are written out. For governments, they're written out. If you want to write your own contingency plans out, feel free to do so. I've just never thought it necessary. But you should think about them and update them, um, as you go along in life periodically. Um, you know, always have a plan B. That's a good, solid principle to live by. Always have a plan B for anything that's really important to you, any goal that's really important to you. And then, if plan A doesn't work out and plan B becomes plan A, then get a new plan B. So, or you could have thought in advance and had a plan C or a plan D or plan E, but always have a plan B. Um, it's good to have a plan C, D, and E as well, but always have a plan B. And if your plan B turns into a plan A, then get a new plan B. And your backup plans should be realistic. You know, it, Oftentimes we don't want to think too hard about a backup plan, which we think we're not going to use. And you may shortchange the plan because you don't want to think about it a lot, and it may not be very realistic. And if you need to use it and it's not a very well thought out, realistic backup plan, it's not going to work. So you want to think about these backup plans and make sure they're realistic and that they work, and resist the urge to just be lazy and just you know have some unrealistic backup plan just because it doesn't take you long to think about it and come up with it. So your backup plans, you got to be careful. They need to be realistic. They need to be well thought out. You just play scenarios in your mind, simulations of what could happen and how do you respond to that, and what the consequences of your response will be, what's likely to happen due to your response. So they're really just simulations you work out in your mind. Of course, you can talk to other people about it as well, and they may be able to give you insights on what's likely to happen, or what your actions are likely to result in your contingency plan. That's always a good idea. But they're essentially contingency plans are basically just simulations of what could go wrong and how you respond. Uh, and you're far less likely to make costly mistakes if you have well thought out contingency plans. You have a well thought out plan B. It can really save you making big mistakes and keep you on track to your ultimate goal. Maybe not the way you wanted it to work out, or maybe not the steps you anticipated that you would take, but you're still on the right track to that goal. You're still going to get that ultimate goal, just not the way you thought you were going to do it. I mean, we're not um, um, people who can predict the future. We don't have crystal balls. Things are going to not work out the way we thought they were. So the fact that one plan didn't work is no big deal. You would expect that your plans aren't going to work. So that's why you have backups, because one of them may work, may very well work. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to hedge against the likelihood that whatever plan you came up with isn't going to work for some reason due to some sort of disruption. Contingency planning, it's like a game of chess. Uh, you don't know exactly what the moves are going to be, but you have them planned out in advance. And you don't know what your opponent is necessarily going to do, these disrupting factors. But you have worked out in advance that if they make this move, you're going to counter with that move. And it's like a game of chess against the disrupting factors that we have in life. So you have moves thought out well in advance. And you may never make those particular moves. They're just contingent moves, depending on what your opponent decides to throw against you. But it's like a game of chess. It's well thought out in advance, and you have a good understanding of um, what are the likely scenarios and how you respond to them and still win the game. Uh, so contingency planning is a very important life skill, and the sooner you get to it, the more successful you're going to be in life. And always update those plans, and always have a plan B. Always. All right. If you have any questions or comments, please leave it below. Please press the subscribe button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you learned something. And take care.